Alright, so I recently got to house sit for a friend of mine, and while I was there, I got to dive into their vintage camera collection. Right up front in the collection was this beauty, a Rollei 35, straight out of the 1960s. For those who don't know much about this camera, this is a 35mm film camera that at the time it was made was the smallest 35mm film camera in existence. One thing that I kind of consider a downside with this camera is that it's a viewfinder camera, which means you basically have to guess at the focus based on how far away you think objects are. Despite it being a viewfinder camera, however, there's one big reason why I wanted to shoot with it, and it's the lens, a 40mm Zeiss lens. I've heard tons of good things about Zeiss lenses, so I wanted to put one to the test. And as it turns out, the praise this company gets is totally warranted. Let me load it up with some HP5 so I can show you what I mean. Okay, so here we have the Rollei 35. So the process for loading it, it's kind of weird. On the bottom here, there's like a little tab that you have to lift up on. And then you can slide out the body. And this is what the inside of the camera looks like. And you kind of tip this part down. It's a lot like a point and shoot in that sometimes point and shoots need to load on the right side of the camera instead of the left. That's what you have to do with this one as well. Pull it across. And it's basically from here like loading a normal camera. And you place that part down and then you advance the film and see if it caught. Okay, yep, that appears to have caught. And now I'm just going to close up the camera, put the tab back down, and there we go. The camera is now ready to shoot. So because I'm shooting these shots indoors mostly, I'm gonna have to be focusing at pretty close distances. I'm currently house sitting for somebody, as I've probably already mentioned, and I have no idea where to find a measuring tape. So, I mean, I know how long a piece of paper is. A piece of paper is 11 inches long, so this is approximately equal to a foot, putting 3 of them all next to each other. This is the minimum focusing distance for the Rollei 35. So yeah, that's what I have to deal with. Now, something I forgot to mention while loading the film into the camera is that I decided to push the HP5 2 stops, which might have been a mistake. I'll explain more when I start showing you the pictures that I captured. Picture taken? As you can see with this shot, I did occasionally miss focus, despite my best efforts. At least the pillow's nice and sharp. Another complication with using this camera is that if you're shooting an object up close, not only are you going to struggle to get good focus, the object you're shooting is also always going to be off-center if you try to center it up with the viewfinder. This is because the viewfinder is not in line with the lens, and this small aspect straight up ruined several of my shots. These flower pots in particular were supposed to be framed up nicely in the glass pane of this door, but that didn't happen, and it just looks like a mess in my opinion. So there's this room with a typewriter in it. Every time I've walked past this, the lighting would be slightly different on it and I would want to take another picture. I don't know how many pictures of this typewriter I have. I think it's like 4 on the roll, which feels like a lot. Alright, so if you couldn't tell, this roll turned out really grainy. This is to be expected when you push film, especially if you're pushing 2 stops. One big problem, however, is that I pushed it using Cinestill's DF96 monobath. If you use a monobath to try and push film, the only way to do it is to increase the temperature of the monobath. And pushing the film 2 stops means I developed this roll at 35 degrees Celsius. If you're developing film in hot chemicals, there's a phenomenon that can occur called reticulation. This is basically where the film grain expands and clumps together into these weird lumps, and when you view them from a distance, it creates these weird serpentine patterns on the film. Some people actually like this look, but I don't. If you want to zoom in and see the details of an image, it really gets in the way. I originally used monobath because it's just one chemical and that's really easy to manage, but from what I've heard, the traditional process is a lot more forgiving, so that's what I'm going to go with. For my last image on the roll, it felt fitting to take a picture of the sunset. In the end, most of the shots I got on this roll were okay, I guess. I mean, there's a few that I'm really happy with, but the fact that I couldn't focus properly on most of the shots means I didn't get to show you guys how good this camera can be in the hands of a competent photographer. I previously shot some expired black and white film with this camera, and out of sheer luck, I captured this picture. And zooming in, I'm pretty sure this is the sharpest picture I've ever taken. Shot at f5.6, you can really see the texture on the side of the building when it's enlarged. At this level of sharpness, the limiting factor no longer becomes the quality of your camera or your lens, and instead it's the image quality of the scanner you're using, which for me is an Epson V600. Okay, so now that I've shot a couple rolls through this camera, what do I think of it? I like it a lot. I think its convenience is its strongest point. Like, it's so small you can just fit it into your pocket or sling it around your hand when you go for a walk. But it's not very easy to use. I had a really hard time getting photos that I was really happy with, but it's probably more of a skill issue than a camera issue. Nailing focus is obviously one of the challenges this camera presents, but another one is just looking through the viewfinder. Besides the fact that it's offset from the lens, it's also pretty small, so it's especially hard to get a good idea of what the shots you're taking look like on a larger scale. I know it sounds like a small thing to complain about, but seriously, having a viewfinder that projects a larger image onto your eyeball makes it so much easier to compose shots that you're going to be happy with. If you can get past the challenges that this camera poses, you can capture some really good images with this camera thanks to the Zeiss lens. Although it's worth mentioning that not every Rollei 35 has a Zeiss lens. So would I recommend this camera? Well, if you're a photography enthusiast, yeah. If you're not, just get yourself a more traditional point-and-shoot camera if you want to scratch that film photography itch. And that's about everything from me. Thanks for watching, everybody.